All right, we'll give it a few seconds of silence and then we'll come in. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Independent Thought. I am your host, Desmond Price. For today's episode, I am bringing to you my second ever panel-based episode with a great cast of candidates, all of which who have been on my podcast before. Welcoming back to the show, my great cast here today. I'm going to first start with Fresh Faces, New Ideas. I feel like you were just on the podcast. You're now making your second appearance. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always happy to be here and hope to be back again.
Yeah, and also another fellow Twitch streamer, Hardwoodensock, also making his second appearance on the show. Thanks for coming back on the podcast today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
We are also joined by Frank Stylz, the host of the 336 Pull-Up podcast, also making his second appearance on the podcast. It's just a day for seconds. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. Look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and finally, Hunter joining us for his fourth appearance on the show. Hunter, thanks for coming back on the show again. How you doing? Season vet
I need a
at this
better
point.
name. That's what I'm realizing. Everybody else has a cool name. I got to get one.
We'll have to work on it after the show, but
Right.
we got a few different topics we want to bring for everyone today. You know, I had a list of things that are going on in the world right now. I felt like each one of these topics could be their own solo episode that I could have done, but I thought what would be better to do is to have all of these topics talked about today from a panel of great minds. So we got a few different topics I'm going to touch on today, but first and foremost, I want to talk about Pacific Gas and Electric. Now, I think I told everybody ahead of time like that we were going to be talking about these subjects today, so I hope you did a little bit of digging into what this company has done over the last few years. But this question comes from a member of my Patreon, so shout out to you. Thank you for bringing this question to me. But mostly what they want to know, and the question I'm posing to all my panelists today, is that companies like Pacific Gas and Electric, and them specifically, have been responsible for hundreds of deaths, thousands of people losing businesses, property damage, so on and so forth, due to lack of infrastructure upgrades over in California, you know, and because of such, wildfires have gone crazy the last, few years. What are our thoughts as a panel on companies like Pacific Gas and Electric and other companies up and down the West Coast and how they've contributed to wildfire devastation? I'm going to start with Fresh Faces, New Ideas. What are your thoughts on companies like this? Are they being punished enough? What are your thoughts?
Look, ultimately, my thought starts with the fact that I don't think the electric grid and just the power grid should be privatized. I think the results that we're going to ultimately get are not as effective. I think if it's a more nationalized system that we can actually deal with these problems and not try to just make the bottom dollar. That's kind of what happened, why Texas was such a disaster. But look, the company went it filed for Chapter 11. It had to pay billions of dollars. It does, though, appear to be, based on what you've sent us, that the company is trying to take the right steps, but this should really have been a warning shot, because I think the first time it was dealing with the issues was early 2007. But this should be a warning shot for all other type of these electric companies, and basically any privatized energy group. It needs to be start looking, if it hasn't already, which at this point would probably make them criminally negligent for when their company starts some type of environmental disaster, whether it's power failures or wildfires, whatever it is. Or if they're not, cyber protected, they need to be getting on to that yesterday, because the green energy is how we're going to basically exist as a species at this point, and just figuring out how to not make things worse by, burning all the forests down, having people freeze to death is always going to be helpful. So the more that they put into this now, the better it will be for them in the end.
Okay, I appreciate that. Hunter, I want you to jump in here next. What are your thoughts on PG&E? Do you think that should we be talking more about what they've done in California, or is there too much blame on them?
So, I mean, the thing with it is that bad things happen no matter what, obviously. And so with a lot of these deaths, I don't know if I hold any one person directly responsible. That being said, I agree that probably we should have more of a nationalized system. That way, it's not just a couple of people that can be blamed or that can be looked at as having the full responsibility for a tragedy. Now, granted, like there's the campfire that they're paying the lawsuits for, and they come up with numbers for what I think it's like what I forget what the number was, but there's a bunch of money they're having to pay out to families of people that died in the campfires and stuff like that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I mean, I think that it's hard to put a monetary value on what these people should get, but at least they're trying to do the right thing, trying to do what they can. So, I mean, in the end, if we didn't have these private companies controlling these huge systems, we wouldn't have that issue to begin with.
Right. Hardwoodensock, PG&E has paid out or agreed to pay out $25 billion in damages to families, to insurance companies, to businesses. Is that enough of a penalty, or do you think they got off easy?
Well, I mean, it could be enough of a penalty, sure. But fines only do so much. You got to follow it up with regulation. And if they're not holding PG&E, accountable with the regulations that they have put in place, well, then the government holds some culpability as well. And as far as like the wildfires go, it's not just because PG&E isn't maintaining, their telephone poles or their electric grid. Like the way that the forests have been mismanaged over the years is definitely contributing as well, which, would fall on the government. So I think that it's a multifaceted issue. We need to hold the company accountable through regulation and penalties, and the government needs to, accept some of the responsibility as well in cleaning up some of the state forests and whatnot.
Okay. And then finally, Frank, where do you kind of feel yourself at on this whole entire conversation? Do you feel as though maybe we're not talking enough about some of the human life that was lost, and some of the financial burdens people have now been taken up by mismanagement of this company because they didn't feel like upgrading their infrastructure?
Yeah, I definitely do, especially on the fact of when you have large companies like PG&E that, people depend on, and, people, they run the power grids and things like that, for them to have the type of destruction that you've seen with the forests, the deaths that have occurred, all some due to negligence, some due to, the government not stepping in and saying, hey, what are you guys doing? Where can we help you if you're having issues? I think it's more than that. I'll give you another example. Here in North Carolina, the power company is Duke Energy. Years ago, probably about, I think it was maybe 5 or 7 years ago, whatever waste materials they use in providing energy, they dumped illegally. Mm-hmm. And so what they have done is they've been taken to court. And what we found is they've been fined heavily. However, they then wanted to take the cost for their mess ups and put it back onto consumers, hardworking people like us. So I think that you do have to regulate these larger companies and start coming down hard on them, because if you don't, what's going to end up happening is, the disaster. You have the disaster in Texas. You had now PG&E destroying, the ecosystem and, destroying people's lives. So I agree, government has to step in, and they need to be held accountable. These companies need to be held accountable to a higher standard for clean energy and making sure they're doing right also by the consumer and the environment.
Absolutely. And I kind of just want to weigh in here a little bit on this. What I thought was more, I don't even know if I want to call it comical. It seems kind of like it's kind of ridiculous to me. We have a bankruptcy system that more or less allows a company to essentially say like, hey, we're taking on a lot of losses due to lawsuits here, and this is kind of financially ruin us. So let's file for bankruptcy and then reformulate as a brand new company. Therefore, anything that happened to us in the past, we can't be liable for here in the future. And I think that that's kind of criminal in and of itself, that we kind of allowed, companies to do that more or less. I mean, you can't file for bankruptcy and get rid of student loans in today's day and age. That carries with you no matter what. But companies can say, hey, we've taken on enough losses here. Let's just reformulate and start all over again. We'll call it all good. So I don't understand how that in and of itself makes sense. But getting away from that a little bit, it really strikes me that we are currently living in a system where companies like this can just decide that they don't want to make upgrades to their infrastructure because it's not financially, I guess, advantageous for them. And we don't really have any mechanisms in place to punish said companies for that. They can just choose to do it. And if devastation happens, like we saw in California or like we saw in Texas, this past winter, companies they're just good to go. There's no federal oversight for them. Do we think that should change? I want to open this up to the panel as a whole, so anyone can answer that question. Do we think that should change at all, or do you think the system is fine the way it is?
Well, I mean, it should change, but the issue is the system is working as intended. These companies aren't designed to produce whatever the need is. Their design is to maximize profit, so they can they produce as much energy as literally needed at the lowest amount they could do. Part of the other not talked about enough part for Texas was when they did manage to get power on, they spiked the price. And Greg Abbott at the end of it was like, yeah, you're kind of stuck by yourself. It sucks to be you for, we can't really do anything about these prices. And that's another issue with the thing. And the other thing is, like, one of the fires, just based on the link that you gave us, said that one of their towers was 25 years overdue for replacement. Like, if you have not having a system to replace these towers is is such a mind-boggling thing. Because wouldn't you, like, if you had the towers and they were less likely to be destroyed, it would just produce more jobs for you. So you could say, look, we're not the company that's doing this, especially after it happens one time. And then but I guess it's like a national issue with just the infrastructure, is we're basically scraping by with whatever the bare minimum of it is. And if something breaks, well, as long as it's not like complete and utter devastation, we'll just go back to the way things are.
I think that the way that they have it now, where it is all these private companies, it kind of creates that problem. Like, it's going to make it so that down the road, if you want to actually have something fixed, it has to be all about a financial motive. In the real world, there's a lot of things that aren't financially beneficial that are, like, I guess I would call it human capital beneficial. It benefits our lives and makes our lives better, but there's not like an actual financial incentive to it. So they don't have the ability as a company. I respect what companies are, and I think they're needed in a lot of things, but when it comes to like public health and safety, corporations have way too much leeway, and just, the regulations would help with that a lot, I think.
Well, we do regulate a bunch of things, right? For instance, I know, like, the Florida tragedy, which happened recently with the building collapse, right? Like, there are regulations, like, to have these things inspected and to get them replaced. Now, if we're not holding, these companies accountable in following these regulations, I don't know if the specific regulations are in place in California, per se, to inspect the poles and, get them on the list to be changed out, which I believe they are, according to that video. But, like, we need like an enforcement arm to make sure that they actually follow through, instead of just a monetary penalty. Maybe a monetary penalty, because then, like Desmond brought up with, you can just file for bankruptcy if you take on too many losses, right? So it can't just be a monetary penalty. There has to be something else. I don't know what that something else is, but I'm pretty sure these regulations are in place to make sure it happens. But we're, maybe the government's understaffed and not enforcing it enough, or something like that, and I think that's where the issue is.
Okay. So
wait, I have one thing to bring up to the panel just quick.
Yeah,
so
sure.
when you're talking about like a secondary penalty, I was trying to kick around a way that would work. But if you have a company that is consistently either causing these problems because their infrastructure is not set up, or they're dodging it through bankruptcy, I think one of the enforcements would be a threat for them to be dissolved as a private entity and be absorbed into the government, because at that point they're no longer profiting for the good of the people, and they're a detriment. Like, at some point it like, maybe you call it under some type of national security issue, because if we're losing electricity in the same way to these fires, or in the rolling blackouts, or people are freezing to death, or in the case of Colonial Pipeline, if a quarter of the country loses the ability to get access to oil, that's like a huge issue. So that's a possible. I don't know the total logistics or how ultimately that would work, but maybe that's some type of detriment besides just a monetary penalty for them.
Anyone see any issues with that?
I have one issue with it, which is if you just absorb those things into the government, then that doesn't stop the people that caused the problem in the first place going somewhere else, finding another thing, a big level thing, and screwing that up too, because they've got all this money and they just keep that power, and then they just find a new avenue to keep making money.
Also, I would be cautious of government overstepping into a bunch of aspects in our life, because the government has shown time and time again that it is not exactly great at taking care of its people. So I would be very cautious about the government taking over my electric,
Right. No, this is why I said this would be something that would have to be debated. As for, when you're talking about people like parachuting out, I imagine it'd be golden parachutes. You could add some type of stipulation that if your company is absorbed by the government, if we're going this route, you can, whoever, like, the assets of the company are dissolved, they don't get a golden parachute on the way out. So that person then, instead of being, I made $80 bajillion on my way out as I fucked this company, that person then has a black mark on the record.
Right.
This is just something that I would, just a possible, extra type of disincentive against fucking this shit up.
Frank, I want you to jump back in here for a second. How do you feel about the federal government possibly taking over a private company if they make too many mistakes or, cause too much damage?
Well, it depends on how they're going to take it over, right? Because if you're in business, and I'll give you an example, if you get a line of credit from the bank and you default on that line of credit, there's an agreement between you and the bank that says that we can come in and reorganize this whole organization the way that we want until this debt is paid. So if, to the last panelist that said, hey, if they're fucking it up, they should be able to come in and step in and do something. Now, take it over completely, I don't know. I'm in agreement. I'm like, we can barely get them to do the necessary things that they need to do for people today. Look at this whole pandemic thing. So I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree with them taking it over completely. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about this, someone needs to be held accountable. If not the company, and them being punished in some type of way, whether they can't go into business or someone else, because all companies, let's just put it this way, all companies aren't bad, right? All companies that some companies are out there doing the right thing, doing what they're supposed to do. Give those companies an opportunity to come in and do the right thing. So it's a catch-22. Like, what are you going to do? And I guess that's why we're sitting on this panel today, having this great conversation. So.
Yeah, and I just want to close by saying, thanks you to all of you who gave your opinions on this. This is a conversation that I feel like should be being had more on places like Capitol Hill, but unfortunately, it feels as though no real oversight ever truly comes through there, not without some kind of financial incentive anyway. But instead of talking about that, I want to talk about something that is a little more pressing to our everyday lives: the COVID-19 vaccine. So right now there is, I think the last time I checked, about half of our country is currently vaccinated, and there is an enormous push to get more and more people vaccinated. It has caused a lot of tension for a lot of people in this country. And I'm almost even afraid to talk about it, because I feel like if you say the wrong thing about vaccines on any kind of platform, you are liable to be canceled. But we're going to talk about it anyway. So the first topic I want to talk about here, because we have two different ones particularly, but the first one I want to talk about is, why are people not getting vaccinated? There are potentially several different reasons. It could be a combination of reasons. Is it distrust in the government? Is it distrust in the media? Distrust in pharma, maybe? Or is it just conspiracy theories? I want to hear everyone's thoughts on this. Frank, you went last time, so I want you to go first this time. What is your thoughts on this situation? Why do you think so many people in America are refusing to get vaccinated?
There's a couple different reasons. I think you gave a lot of the reasons just in opening into this topic. Let's just start from the African American standpoint. So the African American standpoint, you hear them all the time saying, hey, we need to get into these neighborhoods. We need to make sure that Black people and brown people have access to this vaccine. Well, when you go back and you look into history, what has happened with African Americans, the Tuskegee experiment, a lot of people think of that immediately, right? This was forced upon us. Now they're trying to force something else upon us that's been done within 6 months. It hasn't even been approved yet. Why should I take this? I don't know what's in it. So that's that perspective. But then you also have the perspective of the CDC. I don't think the CDC understands what's going on with it, because if you go into their website and you look at what they say regarding the vaccine, it's all over the place. One day it's, hey, wear a mask. That prevents everything from happening. It prevents you from catching it. But then it's like, well, no, don't wear a mask. You've been vaccinated. You're good to go. But then we're right back to, oh, I think we need to wear a mask to protect others. You can still catch it. You can still give it to other people, but wear a mask. So I think that's a problem. So that goes back, that lies with the government. What is really true and what is really not? You have to be more clear and more conscious when you're talking about something as serious as this, because people watching the news are just as confused. So you throw in conspiracy theories, you throw in social media and other platforms that some of them are just telling outright lies about it, and then you make it political. Now you have just a tendency for a perfect storm. And that's where we are, in my opinion, in today's society. People are starting to say things like, oh, well, it's none of your business if I'm vaccinated or not. I mean, but we also forget that probably the majority of those people that say it's none of your business if I was vaccinated or not probably got vaccinations before they can even start school. So, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I think that people have to trust in what they believe, allow them to make their own decision. I'm all about, hey, if you want to get vaccinated, that's on you. If I want to get vaccinated, that's on me. If you don't want to get vaccinated, that's on you. That's okay too. But at the end of the day, it's your choice to decide which route you want to go. But I think that these so-called entities have to be more responsible about the information that they're giving to the American people.
Okay. I understand your take completely. Just before we go any further into this, I want to just say, I guess probably just for cover your own ass sake, that definitely talk to your doctor about vaccines. We are 5 panelists giving our opinions about vaccines, but definitely, don't take any one of our opinions as gospel. Just want to kind of cover myself there. But let's transition now to Hardwoodensock. I know that you and I have had some conversations about vaccines, whether or not that they're safe. I think I came on your stream and we had this conversation a couple of months ago. Lots happened since those last couple of months. So where do you currently stand on this? Like, why do you think so many people are still choosing not to get vaccinated?
Well, I think there's a few reasons, kind of echoing what you and I'm sorry, I forget the last panelist's name, but kind of echoing those sentiments, and then adding on to that is what with the science that is coming out about people who are vaccinated and people who are unvaccinated in regards to transmission and whatnot, or in regards to lockdowns. It's very up in the air and very wishy-washy. You have studies coming out of Massachusetts where roughly 60% of the people who got infected with COVID in this experiment were vaccinated. 4 of the 5 that were hospitalized out of these few hundred people were vaccinated. So only 1/5 of those that were hospitalized were unvaccinated. So there are these studies that are coming out that are very concerning, for people. And people are like, well, if I'm still going to get the virus, if I'm still going to, possibly end up in the hospital, what's the point? Oh, and if I'm going to get the vaccine, oh, we're still going to have to lock down and wear masks anyway, because case numbers are still going to go up. You put all this together on top of certain conspiracy theories, and then it's like, well, or like history, like atrocities that have happened in the past from like the pharma companies. Like it makes sense why so many people are hesitant. And like I tell everybody, talk to their doctor, make your own decision. I love everyone equally. Just I want everyone to make the best decision for themselves. And like that's what we have to do. Everyone go talk to your doctor and make the best decision you feel for yourself.
Okay. Fresh faces, new ideas. I want you to jump in here next. Vaccines have become, I feel like it's like the main thing dominating the news right now. I think it's the only thing dominating the news right now, especially as we're seeing mandates come down. We're going to get to that here in the next topic here, but why do you think that so many people are against this vaccine? Like, do you think it's appropriate, or do you think there is a lot of disinformation out there, or do you think that it's rightfully so? Because as people will point out, FDA hasn't cleared it yet. CDC's been inconsistent. Government's been inconsistent. Where do you fall on this?
Look, so yes, obviously this is the biggest issue because prior till basically the last week, nothing else was happening, and then Afghanistan went to hell. But look, so there's a lot of reasons. One, there's studies done that Americans are more conspiratorial than other nations. We do have a larger output of fake news, and there were missteps, obviously. I think the CDC revoking the original mask mandates as people were vaccinated was a problem because they thought that people would be vaccinated and they'd say, okay, well, now I'm just going to do that to not wear the mask. But the people who were complaining about wearing the mask weren't wearing the mask anyway, so they weren't going to get vaccinated. And look, there are a lot of studies, and there are things that need to be done better by the media. Like, for example, the people who are talking about VAERS, there needs to be a better explanation of what VAERS is, so that when people cite data like, oh, there's 7,000 deaths tied to the vaccine, you could be like, well, no, that's not accurate. There's also needs to not be headlines like person got vaccine then died, but then you read the article, they got hit by a bus. When we talk about, oh, you can still get it. Well, you have to, argue the numbers. Statistically, getting it is like significantly less than the chance of not getting it. And then even if you do get it and you have the ability to spread it, if I'm vaccinated, if I get COVID, but I'm asymptomatic and I spread it, the person who's more likely to get it from me spreading it is still somebody who's unvaccinated. So yes, while there have been some missteps and there are people who maliciously spreading rumors about this or lies, getting vaccinated is the answer. It's ultimately how we're going to stop the spread. The more the Delta variant is able to spread, especially in other countries, we have whatever the Lambda variant, or there was like 10 minutes where there was a Delta plus variant. I haven't heard anything about that since. The more likely it is that we're going to have to deal with longer term consequences and possibly a second round of vaccinations. The need for more people to get vaccinated is the answer. Yes, there are studies like Sock noted, the Massachusetts, where things like that happen, but those appear to be more outliers. The numbers overwhelmingly show that you are more likely to be safe getting the vaccine from COVID and then not get hospitalized. So we need to really do this push to get people vaccinated. You can see just the numbers are spiking back up. I mean, we're at almost the numbers in Florida and Texas are worse than at any point during the pandemic. And we had a year where we didn't have a vaccine. Like, how do you square that circle? Like, just saying that, oh, cases are rising now, so I can't get vaccinated is just a thought line that doesn't make sense, because the reason cases are rising is because people aren't getting vaccinated as enough, and we have a more contagious spread.
Okay. Hunter, I want you to join us here. Last but not least, come in and join us. Why do you think people aren't getting vaccinated?
So I'm not vaccinated because I'm lazy and I don't feel like it. Thing is, like it's gonna get you one way or another. The COVID's gonna get you. I'm pretty sure they're gonna keep it around. It's too good for ratings, and they're never gonna let it go. They're gonna always have another variant, another word. It's gonna be COVID 2226 version, and they're going to have another one and a new thing. And whether you wear the mask or don't wear the mask, get the vaccine, don't get the vaccine, it's always going to be in, like, at least for another 5 years. They're going to have something about it. I might as well go outside on a sunny day and bring an umbrella just in case. because you're going to die. We're all going to die at the end of everything. And if we have rates on this, if you're vaccinated and it's low rates, great. Then we should get the vaccine, stop wearing the masks. Unless you feel like it, you should wear it if you feel like it, but we shouldn't tell people what they have to do with their lives, while at the same time telling them that even if you do the thing that says everyone can go back to normal, you still can't go back to normal. It's really screwed everything up. I wore the mask. I didn't like it, didn't think I should have to, but I wore it until they said there's a vaccine. You get the vaccine, everything should be fine. I said, thank God, we're finally done here. We're going to get the masks off. We're going to have fun. We're going to get the vaccine. And then like, 3 months tops before they're like, you know what, never mind, new COVID, got to have everyone go back inside and keep your masks on again. And I'm like, when does it end? When does it end?
All right, Hunter trying to get me canceled on this platform. I love it. No, but I think you're echoing something that is, I'm going to open up discussion to the whole panel here. I think you're echoing something that is, I think, felt by millions of people in this country. It is a combination of disorganization throughout how our information has been disseminated to us. So the CDC has come out and said, originally, like you should do this with social distancing, then you should do this with how you should be wearing your masks, and they change their information, so on and so forth, which is okay at the end of the day. It's okay to update information as you receive new information. I don't expect people to have all of the answers at the beginning of a worldwide pandemic, something that we haven't seen in our country in over 100 years. But a lot of this, in my mind, does kind of fall on our institutions who provide us information. They've done a terrible job at keeping the public well informed. And due to that fact, there is now a lot of mistrust because people are confused as to why we're seeing what we're seeing in the pandemic. And so I clearly personally understand why there is so much distrust when you combine that with the fact that some people do have credible questions as to why the government is going so far out of its way to push a vaccine, but they're not able to go so far out of the way to push people or like give people free insulin or give people free healthcare in other ways. And they're saying, why are we getting this vaccine for free? Which in my mind does make a little bit of sense why they're giving you the vaccine for free and not other pieces of healthcare for free, because this disease is infectious. But those questions are out there. People are skeptical of their government, of pharma, of their media. I want to open this up to everybody now, though. Do we think as a panel that we're ever going to get to a point where we can, as a whole nation, trust this vaccine? Is it going to be a matter of time, or is the distrust already too deeply rooted because of everything that's happened to this point?
It should be a matter of time. But in reality, it's going to be a matter of people dying off. Look, this vaccine is overwhelmingly effective. The idea that it isn't is just belayed by all the numbers. Let's just scroll through memory lane of this year. Joe Biden took office. We were losing about 4,000 people a day. That lasted for about a month as the vaccine rollout started, and then the numbers plummeted. Prior to this week, where it started spiking in the last month, we were losing somewhere roughly between 300 and 400 people a day, which is a 90% decrease. And that is partly due to vaccination. I'm sure all of us have remembered, I know time has no more meaning, but all of us remember 2 months ago when we were all talking about white boy summer because it looked like we were rounding the corner. And then cases started spiking because the variant that spread faster that they were talking about when the vaccination rate started to slow, they say, hey, look, this variant is still here. It's more contagious, and we still need to deal with this. This isn't going away. So we actually have evidence within the last couple of months that this stuff works, and this is an effective way. Unfortunately, there's still people who will nitpick on little facts, like, oh, why don't we make all medicine free? Yeah, I'm for nationalizing healthcare. And I swear to God, I'm not actually about nationalizing every single thing. There are just certain things I think the government can do better than private corporations. And yeah, you want to get into the argument, oh, big pharma is making money off this? Yeah, of course it is. Large corporations make money off of everything. I'm sure that's a massive reason for why Afghanistan was so screwed up. But this idea like that we can't trust it because a corporation is making a profit off of it doesn't, like, what, how do you exist that way? Because then you basically have to go live in the woods and make your own fire to not have any access to other corporations. The vaccine is effective, and we have to keep pushing it because that is the way to get out of it. the way to, if we get the 70 to 80% of people who actually need it, because that's what they say we need for herd immunity, so that we can get a better handle on this, that is what we need to do. And it can't just be for here, because as bad as it's going to be here, they're talking in Africa, they're talking 50% of their population, 50% of their population vaccinated by 2024. Like, it doesn't matter if we're all vaccinated and then we get Zeta or Omega virus out of Africa, and it kicks the shit out of the protections we have. And for the people who also are saying, well, you know, I got it, so now I'm not going to, I have the antibodies. They did studies on that. They said, yes, you are protected, but it varies. If you got the wild type, which was the original strain of COVID, it doesn't have the same protections against Delta. If you got the antibodies because you had COVID, and then you get the vaccine, you are more protected and even less likely than somebody else. The data is overwhelming. If you don't understand the questions, or you have questions about this, ask your doctor. Don't go online, because if you go online and you Google this, there's a good chance you're not going to either understand the sources that you're looking at, or find sources that are, you know, jacked up by algorithms, where you end up with, or you look at VAERS and you say, okay, well, 7,000 people have died. Or you look at like bits and pieces of sources that aren't accurate. You need to talk to medical experts. And then finally on this, the idea that people say, oh, it needs more testing. The reason it was pushed out so quickly was because they did multiple layers of testing simultaneously, because they cut through a lot of the red tape to get it out, because it was such emergency. And also, for those people who say it needs more testing, can you tell me what testing you would do that the people who do this for a living and that they wanted to get right have not thought of or done, that you would be okay with? Like, what is the level that you would be acceptable? So I think, look, realistically, the best way for this to happen is there's going to be such a push, because it's going to be so uncomfortable for the people who are unvaccinated.
All right. So I'm going to push back a lot on what you're saying. You know, like, I love you, man, but all right. So when we have articles come out that say that the viral load is the same in vaccinated individuals who come down with the virus as unvaccinated individuals, right? It's reasonable to believe that the virus is going to continue to mutate whether you're vaccinated or not. If the viral load is the same, it's going to be transmitted the same, right? So whether you're vaccinated or not, the virus is still going to transmit. It's not about immunity. It's about, you know, slowing down symptoms, right? Helping reduce symptoms, which I would agree with you that it does work there. All right. And it does slow transmission, but it doesn't prevent transmission. And if it did prevent transmission, well, then vaccinated people would have nothing to worry about, and nobody would be getting sick, right? But the fact, like, I haven't gotten an answer from anyone on this question, which is, you know, if the viral load is the same, right? What is preventing it from mutating, right? What is preventing it from spreading? Whether you have the vaccine or not, if the viral load is similar, you know, I feel like it makes sense that it's going to continue to spread, whether you're vaccinated or not. So, like, there are stats out there, you know, that point to, you know, even if we all get the vaccine, the virus is still going to spread, right? Like, it's very similar. Like, if you get it, like, I'm not trying to compare COVID to the flu, but, you know, if you get the flu vaccine, right, guess what? You can still get the flu that year. Like, it's very possible. So, like, we're not talking about immunity. We're talking about lessening of symptoms, right? Which is great. Don't get me wrong. That's great, but it's not going to prevent transmission. And right now we're focusing on, you know, the case numbers going up, you know, but we're like, deaths are going up a little bit. Yes. But from what I've seen so far, the Delta variant isn't nearly as deadly as previous variants, right? It's more transmissible. Yes. Which is acting more like a virus, right? As more variants come out, it tends to become more and more transmissible with less and less of the deadly effects. So to sit here and say, like, the only way we're getting out of this is if we all get vaccinated, I don't see it. The only way we all get out of this is if the government chills out, you know, and lets people live their lives.
Wait, can I push back on a couple things? Just okay.
Sure.
So I understand. I know what you're talking about. The study that was like right when they figured out that Delta can affect vaccinated people, but it's not just just because the viral load is the same doesn't mean the chance of you getting it. So while yes, the viral load between me and an unvaccinated person might be the same, but the third person, that is the next person is where the barrier is. If I'm unvaccinated, me catching it from a vaccinated person is higher than for me if I am vaccinated. So if you still have the barrier, so even if you have a breakthrough case where somebody gets sick from it, the chance of them spreading it to a vaccinated person is still lower. And the reason we know this is because cases dropped. So it's not like the data for it to say that like the cases were the same. Like something changed. Like we acknowledge that something changed between the start of the Biden administration and now, and that was the introduction of vaccines, which demonstrably dropped all of the numbers. And look, and I understand that the Delta variant doesn't appear to be as deadly. And I think that's part of a combination of the virus may not be as deadly. And we kind of already know how to deal with this. Like we have Regeneron, we have some these treatments that can help us deal with it. I think that's part of the reason with the increase in, or the decrease in deaths.
Hunter, Frank, you want to jump in here? All right.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, so I'm just thinking, like, here's the thing. I like the way we handle the flu. It's your personal responsibility. If the vaccine is effective for the flu and you weigh your risk and reward, you get the vaccine, you now no longer have to worry about everyone else that doesn't have the vaccine because it's effective. With COVID, we were told the vaccine's effective. So then if you get the vaccine, you don't have to worry about all the people that decide not to. They can die. That's their own choice. But now they're telling us again that it's no longer okay for you just to get the vaccine. You now still have to worry about everyone else and you have to get the vaccine. It's just not going to add up. There's never going to be a time in our existence where you're going to get all of America to agree with that.
So I think I want to kind of jump in here and put my piece on this a little bit. I think the issue more or less comes down to the fact, I kind of want to touch on two different points here. There's a lot of demonization of people who aren't getting the vaccine right now. And I understand why so many people are angry about this, but I kind of want to, I've said this on Twitter a couple of times the last couple of weeks, but I kind of want to shift focus here a little bit, because as people are talking about whether or not people should get vaccinated, something that you said, I think Fresh Faces in the beginning, was that, you know, Africa, for instance, is still not going to be getting vaccinated for years to come. And I think the large part because of that is because these pharmaceutical companies, again, who we're being asked to trust right now, decided that rather than themselves caring about the people of this world and whether or not these people are vaccinated, they want to continue making as much profit as humanly possible off the vaccine, which is why they won't open up these patent protections and allow other countries to make generic versions of this vaccine, which is why so many countries around the world right now have such low vaccination rates, because instead of being able to distribute their own vaccines, they're relying on COVAX to, you know, have these donated vaccines to them, which I think as of right now, the US has only sent out 100 million doses around the world for, you know, our global population of 7 billion. So if you, for instance, if we're taking the Pfizer vaccine, that means that the world would need 14 billion doses of this vaccine in order for the globe to be vaccinated. But we only sent out 100 million doses so far. And so while the rest of the world is thoroughly unvaccinated, and a lot of these countries are begging for a vaccine, this virus will just continue to mutate in other parts of the world and make its way here. So that is a massive issue. So while we're debating here in America about whether or not people should get vaccinated, the rest of the world is struggling. I mean, Iran is dealing with deaths right now. Indonesia is dealing with deaths right now. Japan, a first world nation, only has like 10% of their population vaccinated right now. It's a giant mess. I truly don't understand why, you know, instead of focusing on getting people in America to get vaccinated, which I also think is an important thing to incentivize people to get vaccinated, but it is truly baffling to me that we kind of put some pressure on pharma in the beginning to open up patent protections, but now more or less we've gone away from that conversation altogether, which I think is criminal.
Are we open now?
Oh yeah, jump on in.
Look, it's just money. Also, even if you're one of those people who believe that American hegemony should continue. A way to influence through soft power would be for us to donate these, because otherwise they're going to get the Sputnik version, which varies how effective that is, or whatever China's variant of the vaccine. I legitimately do not know what the name is. I probably should look that up when I'm talking about this. But like it's an ability, if you're coming in to build these, because I think part of the problem is not just the release of the patents, it's the actual manufacturing of the vaccine. There's bottlenecks to it. So figuring out how to build the factories or to train the people to get the vaccine would be a benefit for I imagine whatever country that we help to do it that way. The actual spreading it to other countries is not, giving the vaccine to other countries is not something I've spent a lot of time looking into. I've kind of been focused on trying to help America get vaccinated.
If the pandemic is something that affects everyone globally, and we're willing to dump billions upon billions of dollars into making sure that Americans are vaccinated because it's a national security risk or it's a national health risk, and we know that the virus itself will mutate in other parts of the world and make its way here, logic would dictate that we would spend money here to make sure that other facilities in the world can be built. Therefore, those countries can create their own vaccines. Therefore, we would essentially be lowering its ability to mutate by allowing more of the globe to become vaccinated as they choose to. But choosing whether or not to get the vaccine is the next topic, because we are now going to be talking about vaccine mandates, which have been popping up not just here in America, but in other parts of the world. But we're going to focus here on America just for the beginning here. New York City and San Francisco have both come out with vaccine mandates for indoor activities, such as going to restaurants, going to the gym, going to the bar. The military has made it mandatory for all service members starting September 15th, I believe. And certain schools and universities are also making it mandatory, as the University of Indiana just came out and said that it is requiring students to be vaccinated, which was just appealed up to the Supreme Court this past week and was struck down by Justice Amy Coney Barrett. So that will stay in effect. Vaccine mandates are the hottest topic in my mind right now about what's happening here in this country. And so I want to start this conversation off with Hardwoodensock. What are your thoughts on vaccine mandates? Are you okay with them? Are you not okay with them? Tell me your thoughts on this.
Well, I'm sure this is going to come as a surprise to everybody here, but I am 100% not okay with this at all. Like what we're talking about, you have to walk around with proof that you got vaccinated, right? For a vaccine that you can still catch the virus. You can still pass on the virus, right? Like that doesn't stop because you're vaccinated, right? Like these vaccines work way different than what we're talking about, like with polio or with measles, mumps, rubella. Like those give you immunity. These vaccines, like they're giving you partial immunity, yes, but they're not giving you complete immunity. They're helping you, with some of the symptoms, which is great. But for the government requiring me, right, to walk around with a card, right, to go into a restaurant or to go into a grocery store, right? I mean, something sounds a little off there, right? We shouldn't have to show our papers to do these things, right? We all, like, basically you have to get vaccinated to participate in society. With this vaccine that isn't fully approved, doesn't prevent transmission, it's insane to me that like we're okay with this, right? And if you want to do some soft incentives, like offer cash or something else, that's fine. But then also you have a legal liability now if you're mandating these things, right? If you're mandating these things and you have an adverse effect to these vaccines, well, guess what? Guess who's on the hook for it? Oh, not the pharmaceutical companies, because the government gave them immunity, right? So now it's going to have to be the government, right? So like there's so many issues that go on behind this, and we're just like, oh no, force everyone to do it. Great idea. You know what I mean?
All right, Frank, I want you to jump in here next. How are you feeling about vaccine mandates? As as we are seeing these crop up now, I think little by little, I think we saw like New York pass theirs, I think was a couple weeks ago. San Francisco came down with theirs just this week. Military kind of came out also this week and said about what they're going to do with service members. It feels as though this is going to start being a snowball effect across the country. Some people think this is a good thing because it's going to make people more safe. Do you feel the same way? Do you think the ends justify the means here?
I think it's, in my opinion, I think it is a good thing, because I think all of us can agree on this panel. We know that COVID is real, right? Because there are people out there that truly don't believe that we're even in a pandemic, right? So in places like New York, where we knew at one point in time it was rampant, people were dying, and it was horrible in New York, one of the largest cities in the United States. So I can understand that fact. Here in North Carolina, they just recently passed their mandate this past Friday, which says whether you're vaccinated or not, you will be required to wear a mask, in public places. So that was just passed this Friday as of 5 p.m. So I think it's a good thing, because what scares me the most are those that are using this as a political tool because they don't believe that this is true. So my concern has always been, even before the vaccination, was, well, I'm staying in the house. I'm not, I'm just going to the places I need to go, because these people are saying that they don't believe this is real, and people are dying from this, And so for me, I think it's a good thing. I think that you have to have something to protect. Think about businesses. Think about how many businesses were shut down because of COVID. So for businesses, what else can they do? I mean, they have to put something in place to try to protect their business, so they don't already, so they don't lose more money than they have already lost from the previous year. So something has to be in place. Now, you can also have the argument like, hey, if this is a free country, if this is something, if we build, this is what our forefathers built this country on, having the freedom to do what you want, so to speak. I also understand that some people are going to be like, well, I shouldn't have to do that. I don't think I should have to do that. It's my right. You're telling me something that I have a right to do. I mean, think about Florida. Florida is one of the states that, unfortunately, conservative state, right? Governor, very conservative. Governor, in my opinion, I don't think he believes in masks, right? Obviously he doesn't. When you threaten a superintendent's pay or money for education for your state, because they are putting down a mandate for masks, I think that's kind of jacked up. I think that people should be, for kids and for crowded places like universities and things like that, you have to have something in place to make people feel safe. And I think that's why you're seeing some of these mandates.
All right. Thank you for that, Frank. Hunter, I want you to jump in here next. Mask mandates. Vaccine mandates, they feel like very different things, but I think they feel intertwined in the same way. Are vaccine mandates necessary? Do you believe that they are a good thing for society, or do you think that they are another government overreach?
We're going to be shocked, right? I don't think we should have any kind of mandate. I think a business can, if the business really wants to say, okay, we want you to wear masks, or we want you to show proof. You're fine. I'm not going to go to your establishment. Even if I get a vaccine, I don't want you asking me for something at the door to prove I've done it. So I'm not going to be okay with that. And they can't arrest everyone. If a bunch of people refuse to do it, regardless of what happens, it's probably what's going to happen. You can't expect that you tell someone a vaccine works and you have to get it, but also you have to wear a mask. And even if even if you have the option now to get it, so you don't have to worry about other people because you're vaccinated, so they can make their own choice, you still have to do it, or you can't come into here. There's so much that doesn't make sense. As far as Governor DeSantis goes, he's not saying he doesn't believe in COVID, or maybe that I think he doesn't believe masks work, probably for a good reason, because, even if they did work, that it doesn't matter. You should have the choice now. But he's also doing it because parents should have the right to choose what their kids do, instead of the government saying your kids have to do this. Who are they protecting? Kids don't die from it. The teachers can get vaccinated. Who is protected by it? It's no one. It's all about the theater of it. That's why he keeps coming out and saying these things. And people, if you actually follow the numbers and the facts, there's nothing to support having all these kids wear masks at school, and it causes other issues for their lives. I have kids. If you have your kids wearing masks around all their friends, they can't get as close. They don't feel comfortable. They don't even know if the other kids feel the same way they do, or if they should even say hi to them anymore. It is weird and it's awkward, and it's going to mess with their lives. You may not even, there is a risk and reward to everything. You can choose whether something is worth the risk. When I go skydiving out of an airplane, okay, I'm making a choice. Yeah, that's risky. I might die. There's a good chance. Well, I mean, not a good chance. You're probably not going to die, just like you won't die on a roller coaster. But you're taking that chance because you think the reward of something is worth it for you, because you make that choice about your life. And some people just love the thrill, you know, jumping off of bridges and stuff like that into water. Hopefully, maybe some people don't. But yeah, you know, I mean, you get to make those choices. It's strange that this is the one thing. I think it's actually been politicized the wrong way. I think it's been politicized to where people think that you need to wear these masks. And people seem to have this idea that it's been politicized so people are thinking you don't. I think it's been politicized so people think you do. The opposite way.
All right, fresh faces, new ideas.
If
I want you to. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, 1 second. We'll open
I'll-
up here in a second.
I'm sorry, Desmond. I just wanted to just see if I could just respond to Hunter.
Oh, yep. 1 second. We'll get fresh faces getting in first, and you come in right after.
No, let him go. I got enough to respond to if you want
Oh,
to
okay.
do it first.
All right. Messing up my flow here.
Well,
I
sorry
got a
about that,
list
Des.
now.
Yeah.
I'm controversial.
I would. It's all right, Hunter. You know, I would agree with you. I would agree with you about, you know, having the choice, right? Because, you know, I'm an independent, so there are some things that I agree with on the Republican side, some things I agree with on the Democratic side, right? But at the end of the day, what I care about are the American people, and I would never want to intrude on anyone's views, right? That's why we're having this discussion. That's what makes it great. The only problem I have, and this is the only place that I saw it on, is because it's on the news on the in Florida. If people were saying, "Hey, it should be my choice for my child to, you know, wear this or not," you know, we understand that COVID is out there, I would understand. But when I see people on TV, I saw a lady the other day say she wanted everyone to see her child's beauty. She didn't care. She didn't say anything about COVID. She didn't say anything about thousands of people dying or, you know, in that state. And we know that this is happening, right? She was like, well, I want everyone to see my child's beauty. I want everyone to see my child's smile. And I'm like, this is the type of stuff. And this is where everything gets lost, the whole, you know, point of it. So, I just wanted to make clear that I think everyone should have their choice, but I do understand why people are trying to put these things out there, because what happens is, what are you going to say? Are you just going to cater to that one group of people that says, hey, it should be my choice? Well, what about the people that are like, well, I don't care if it's his choice or not. My grandmother died from this and I've seen what it can do. I want some form of protection. So, you know, what are you going to do, right? And again, that goes back to why we're having this discussion, because at the end of the day, we're doing what we know to do. And knock on wood, I haven't had anyone close to me pass away from COVID, but I have had some friends that have. And I'm just like, I feel so sorry for them. And it's like, they're like, 1 minute I got to wear a mask, the next minute I don't. Then they say get vaccinated. Then they say don't get vaccinated. You know, it's just mad. At the end of the day, government and the CDC, well, the CDC is government, but these guys need to come up with a clear path for everyone so that we can better understand what this is. And if they don't understand everything about it, just come on and tell us, hey, we don't understand everything about it. Here's the best thing that you can do. Don't push something out there to us that says, hey, everything's going to be okay now. And then we find out now you're retracting and saying it's not. So I just wanted to say that, man. I respect your opinion. But when I see people on TV, like, not concerned about their kids getting sick, but more concerned about the beauty of her smile, I'm like, she may not have been the person you wanted to put on the news.
Yeah. The mental health of the kids is my concern. Yeah.
That's true. That is very true.
The mental
that
health.
That is very true. My kids have been, homeschooled all that, online learning all last year. So I definitely understand that they need to interact. They need to be socialized. They need to be social. But no, that's all I had wanted to say, man.
All right, fresh faces, new ideas. Jump in here. Give us your thoughts on vaccine mandates, and then we'll open up for some open panel discussion afterwards.
Okay, so I think the vaccine mandates have to fall into two separate categories. The government can require them as long as they are for like federal employees and it requires to a federal building where the government has oversight for it. That's fine. And as for private businesses want to do it, they can do it. That's fine. This is not a directly tied to this, but Sock, when you were talking about having to carry around an ID, isn't this the exact argument people make for having voter ID? Is that you carry around a little ID anyway, so it's not a big deal. So if you say that's not a big look, and let me be clear before, because that will ultimately be a tangent that you and I can have an argument about another time. But you're saying being forced to carry it around is a burden to you, so therefore we should not have voter ID by that same logic. As for requirements, the military has been required to be vaccinated since the founding of this country. Washington did it. It has been required. If you join the military, you're required to get a fuck ton of, like, there's a literal multi-page list of the things that you're required to get vaccinated for. This is not new. Schools and camps and colleges, since 1905, there has been a Supreme Court ruling saying that they are allowed to require you to be vaccinated. These are things that have happened and they continue to happen. These are not new. As for the private companies, if they want to do it, that's fine, because they want to be the ones that say people will feel more comfortable to go into somewhere where they know that there is a mask mandate, there is a vaccine mandate required to be there, because that was where the majority of people will feel safer, and those corporations are more likely to get businesses. If you don't want to go there, that's your right. You're allowed to do that, unless it's a BDS Israel thing. Then we're talking about different arguments. As for the government getting things wrong and changing things up, one of the problems with this is especially this disease has gone on, we've gained different types of information. One of the things that is that is pushed back is one of these Fauci lies, and one of the talking point is based on the February 6th email he sent. So back in February, we've known about the COVID virus, give or take 4 months, depending on whether or not we have the direct data that it was here in like October. But at that point, he was saying in a private email, yeah, it looks like some of these masks aren't going to be effective. And at the time, he was telling people you should probably not be wearing you should not be wearing N95 masks, you should be wearing cloth masks. The reasoning behind that being they were afraid that we're going to run out of supplies, which obviously is a mistake to have said you should be wearing this type of mask because we're worried about supplies. I think had he told people that, we would have had a little bit of pandemic or a little bit of a panic like we did with the toilet paper, like we then did with the gas when the gas happened. So there's a lot to this. So look, the government, obviously, when it comes to something like this, they're still learning. But the idea of understanding where things are because new data comes out of it shouldn't be considered a backtrack. It should become, that's how it's supposed to be. If you gain new information, you should be able to update your opinions. This idea that masks don't work is just fundamentally inaccurate. I do understand the argument about kids, their mental health. I think the fact that as schools are opening right now, we are seeing record high number of children in hospitals. We are seeing rising cases, especially in schools in Atlanta. They're dealing with massive issues where they have to get shut down. Damn it, I don't remember. I think it was Florida where those 4 teachers just died. There is more to this. I think it is more damaging for these children to constantly have to worry about whether or not they're going to get sick about something that we can more or less entirely mitigate, and whether their friends and their family are going to be sick. Unfortunately, children today have a massive amount of issues to deal with because our world is basically going to hell in a handbasket, and it is difficult to deal with. I know, especially when the climate change report came out, I was having like mental breakdown for like 3 days. So there's a lot for children to deal with, and it's hard, and I do sympathize with it, but I think we're just prolonging this by fighting this. So ultimately, back to the original point, I think if we break down the mandates to two different things, the federal government for entities or the local governments, whatever they have the ability to cover, whether it's their federal buildings, federal employees, the military, things like that, they have the absolute right to require those vaccinations. It has been upheld through law. It has been held since the founding of our country. And as for schools and camps and stuff, that has been held up since basically the turn of the last century. There's obvious exemptions for it, I imagine. but these aren't like massive overreach. These are generally long-standing pillars that just have been politicized because this is the climate that we're in.
All right. I think before I open it up for the open panel, I kind of want to just give my thoughts on all this. As far as mandates are concerned, I'm completely okay with the government mandating that service members be vaccinated. I don't think that there is anything wrong with that. I mean, more or less, as you were pointing out, this is nothing new as far as what the military is required to do when it comes to being in service. They are asked to be vaccinated against other diseases, so this doesn't really fall out of line for me. I also don't have an issue with schools mandating vaccinations. They mandate other vaccinations as well. So in my mind, areas like universities, public schools, I don't see an issue with vaccinations being required. However, cities mandating vaccinations for bars, restaurants, gyms, I would feel more comfortable with that if it was the individual businesses asking customers to do that. But when it comes to the actual, like, we're talking about city, like local governments, it feels a little out of place, not because I don't understand it, because I too want people to get vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. I believe in it. I think people should go out and get vaccinated, but the city doesn't require you to have a vaccination for polio to go into a restaurant. I mean, you have to do so to go into school, but not into a restaurant or into a gym or into a bar. And so it seems a little strange to have that be mandated for one type of an infectious disease, but not for other types of infectious diseases. It just seems a little out of place. I know that they're trying to do the right thing by incentivizing us a little more strongly for people to get vaccinated, but it does seem a little out of character for the cities themselves to be putting those mandates specifically in place. Again, wouldn't be as bothered if individual businesses said, like, yeah, we're just going to put this in place because we feel better as said business owner. With that being said, kind of want to open it up here to the open panel here. If you guys want to speak about what everyone said in their opening statements. Sock, you haven't spoken in a while. I'm sure that you've had some things you've been trying to say here. Why don't you tell us what's on your mind?
No, so fresh faces, no ideas. We can have a talk about the comparison between the passport and voter ID another time. But no, like the fact that you kind of brought it up, right? That it's the government overreach aspect of it, right? If a private business wants all its employees to get vaccinated, sure, it forces all its employees to get vaccinated. Yeah, all right. I might not agree with what they're doing, but I can't argue that the private business doesn't have a right to run their company the way they want to, but the fact that the government is coming in and telling us, right, telling these companies how to enforce this vaccine, right, this vaccine mandate is just insane, right? Because if someone is, I just lost my train of thought, but if someone gets vaccinated, right, and still transmits the virus, right, is it now on the government, right, if that person dies, right? If we're mandating these vaccines, right, like it's very reasonable that people are going to die. People are going to die either way, unfortunately. It's a sad reality. And when the government comes in and is like, hey, you have to get this health procedure to participate in society. Oh, cool, thanks. Now we're getting into bodily autonomy, right? Because now we're getting into you're telling me what I have to do with my body, right? Now, as far as like a mask mandate, Hunter, I'm actually going to push back on you a little bit. Like a mask mandate, all right, whatever. Like they're not forcing you to get a medical procedure. You're forced to wear a shirt if you want to go in stores. You're forced to wear pants and underwear. Now you just have to wear a mask. So like the mask mandate thing, like that's cool. Whatever. But it's not a medical procedure. Now we're talking about getting no, I think it's Australia. One of their slogans is like "No jab, no job." Right? It's like, what? You want me to, like, you're forcing me to get a jab so I can work? I don't know. It's and it's from the government. That's the issue.
Can
that's
we ban the use of the word jab, by the way?
It sounds horrible, doesn't it?
Florida, I think Australia is like 6% vaccinated. They're not but their death rate is like 0. They've done a really good job of mitigating deaths in Australia. Somebody was bringing that up to me.
Yeah, they brought in the military to enforce their lockdown measures. Of course, they're doing good.
You know, on top of that fact, we're also seeing some mandates coming through, you know, in other parts of the world. I know that, France, for instance, made it mandatory for, starting like September 30th, that all healthcare workers have to be vaccinated, that if you want to use public transit or restaurants in France, you have to be vaccinated. In Canada, they've mandated it so that all government workers have to be vaccinated, that if you want to do any air travel within Canada, you have to be vaccinated. Do we think that mandates like that are going to come here to America? Is that inevitable, or do you think that our country is more or less going to push back against that level of mandates? What do you think, Frank?
I think we're going to push back on that type of mandate because, in my opinion, if they could do that, they would have already done so, especially with everything that's going on right now. But I think they know that, hey, we've had enough for one summer last year of stuff going on. And I think that's where we would be. I mean, people probably would take to the streets around that whole thing. And then you get to see, I told you so, you know? So yeah, I don't think they're going to do that. Eventually, Hunter had a good point earlier. Eventually, you know, it's the news, right? It's ratings. It's what you hear every single day. But eventually, just like everything else, I truly do believe that it's going to fade out, and then we're not going to hear anything about it. And everybody's like, "Whoa, wait a minute, what happened with COVID?" You know what I mean? So, you know, I guess it's just that we just, unfortunately, and I think that's the frustrating part. We got to take that wait and see approach to see exactly what happens. And in the meantime, do what you know to do, wash your hands, social distance as much as possible, and just try to be as safe as you can, you know, to the best of your ability.
Frank, I sure hope you're right. I hope it all just kind of fizzles out at some point and we just kind of move on. You know, the flu vaccine is a thing, but we don't require our kids to get the flu vaccine. It's an interesting comparison. I know people say it's not the same as the flu. The death rates after vaccine are probably pretty similar, though. And we don't require that. I'm fine with getting the vaccine. It's probably a good idea. Honestly, I haven't done it because I'm lazy and I don't think I'll die from it because I'm 32 and really healthy. I might be wrong. You know, I might be wrong. Who knows? Maybe I've already had it though. See, that's the other thing is we don't really think about that. There's so many people that get it and never even know because I get sick. I've been sick in the past year, but I don't know what it was. It could have been anything. So anyway, I don't know where we're going to draw that line, but I'll tell you this. I've never protested in my life. I've never stood up for anything because everything seemed reasonable within reason for my life. I didn't really feel a need to really go out there and make a huge point. But if they tried to tell me that for me to do anything, I had to have a freaking card with me, it's not the same as a voter ID at all. That's like your license or something. It's easy. You have to carry that for driving a car. So if you're having
I know there was a different.
Yeah, if I have to have a piece of paper that says I've gotten this thing and it has to have like all, no. Yeah, I will actually go out and do something about that. And
what if it's an app?
I'm not the only one. Huh?
What if it's an app? Is an app?
That's even worse. For some people, they don't like phones. They don't know. They're going to be trying to go in and be like, I know I've got it here somewhere. How do I get to the app? You know, oh, shoot, I have to sign in. What's my password, honey? Honey, I don't know your password. Isn't it your mom's birthday? No, we changed it a week ago. Now we can't go to the store. We have to go home and figure out our password before we can come back and get our groceries. No, I'm not going for that. No, thank you.
Well, that's the Excelsior app in New York. That's what they're attempting to do it that way.
Yeah.
What if we added it to your light driver's license? Is that acceptable?
See, that's an interesting. I was thinking about that because I figured someone might bring that up. If you were to put it onto a driver's license, I think that's an acceptable thing to do because it's a government, so like that's fine. And a lot of people because they think for their protection. But then businesses should still have the choice of, do I card people when they come in here for this? And is it something that I, as a business, think is the right thing to do? And then let them have that choice. So and also, I do think it's okay to put on a driver's license, though. Sure.
And also, so there's two other things that. One, my biggest issue with the vaccine stuff has been the fact that these cards are just too fucking big. They're just not like a shape where I could just slide it into my wallet anyway. So it has like 9 different things for you to sign up. I'm getting 2 shots. I don't need 9 lines. Like, how did you just mess up that rollout?
Well, do you want to get conspiratorial? We can go down that path.
Nope, I don't think we're going conspiratorial today.
I could have a totally fun, different
conspiracies.
conversation
No.
about this.
No.
I'm just about.
I'm already getting canceled after this episode comes out. Let's try to minimize the danger here.
The other thing is, like, I also do think the driver's ID is a better, because we're going to deal with fake vaccination cards, whether they're already drawn or I think, and now I don't have all the information because I just saw this as a Chiron. I think the FBI found a shipment, and I swear to God it said China, but I don't know if I was reading the same Chiron, of fake vaccines. Fake is a vaccine cards.
That's correct. That is correct.
Okay. Yeah. Think about how
that
wild
is correct.
that is. That is what they're like. We're dealing with fake vaccine passports from another country. Like,
Oh man.
how do you? I mean, at that point, you basically have to get it on a driver's license. Although now we're gonna have 18-year-olds who are unvaccinated and be like, well, I guess you're not really 36 because you don't have an ID on it. So it makes it harder for underage drinking. I don't know how you stand on that, but
right. So, all right, I'm gonna wrap up this conversation a little bit, everyone. So we are going to transition here in a little bit. If you are interested in hearing this panel talk about the eviction crisis and critical race theory, make sure that you tune in for the bonus episode. They'll be coming out later this week. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this conversation that we're about to have. But for those of you who are just listening to this episode, we're going to do a quick little sign off. So, but before I, go ahead and do that, I kind of want to just end with one last take here about the vaccines, COVID, so on and so forth. I do think everyone should go get vaccinated. This is just my opinion. I kind of want to just put it out there. Host of the podcast could have the last word on this topic. I think that everyone should go out and get the vaccine. There are lots of people out there who cannot get the vaccine. Compromised people. There are, children who cannot go out and get the vaccine. There are plenty of people who are susceptible to, if they were to receive COVID, would be very much either sick or possibly die from this disease. And the more people who are vaccinated, the less of a chance that that does happen within our society. I think that while we are debating whether or not right now that mandates are necessary in society, I think all of those efforts are more or less geared towards a common perceived good of trying to help those who are more or less susceptible to COVID-19 and what it might do to people if they might be infected by this virus. And while some people, are going to get this virus and have nothing happen to them, this isn't really about them. This is about protecting other people. I think it's the same idea with masks. Masks are more or less about, you lowering your own transmission, not about like protecting you from the virus, but more or less you protecting somebody else from the virus that you might be carrying. So you're not transmitting as much of quote unquote your viral load. And so, with all that being said, I want to thank everyone for their thoughts on these 3 topics. I want to thank Fresh Faces New Ideas, Hardwoodensock, Hunter, Frank. Just some closing statements really quickly here. Just tell everyone where they can find you guys at. We're going to start with you, Fresh Faces New Ideas. Tell everyone where they can find you if they want to hear more from you.
Okay, give me 1 second. I was just playing around with something else. Yeah, so I am Fresh Faces New Ideas. I'm Fresh Faces New Ideas on Twitch. I am Fresh Faces New Ideas on YouTube. I am Faces Ideas because the whole thing doesn't come across on Twitter. I am I think I'm Fresh Faces New Ideas on Instagram. I only use it pretty much solely for when I come on here and the other podcast. I don't think Instagram is good at all.
Don't be bashing Instagram on here. Yeah, go ahead.
But okay. Yeah, if you go, if you didn't catch any of those, if you go follow me on Twitter at Faces Ideas, I have the link to all of that. And I usually stream 1 p.m. EST during the week, and then I kind of do panels on the weekend. But I'll talk to anybody about pretty much anything.
All right, and Frank Stylz, where can they find you at?
You can find me on all DSPs, the 336 Pull Up Podcast. All social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube.
All right, everyone go check out the 336 Pull Up Podcast. Highly recommended. I recommend Fresh Faces, New Ideas as well. My bad. Hardwoodensock, where can they find you at?
You can find me on Twitch. I do a couple streams a week, normally panels or one-on-one discussions. Thanks for having me as always. You can only find me on Twitch because Twitter is the worst platform ever invented. So thank you for having me as always, and I look forward to talking to you again.
All right. And Hunter, do we have anything to plug this time around?
We do. You can find me in Great Falls, in my house, around in the community. Now you can find me on YouTube too. Hunter Coleman. Type in my name, it should come up. And also, I am starting some comedy shows here in town. I know some of the viewers probably live in Missoula, at least. So if anyone is in Great Falls, check around. And I probably will have some shows. We're doing some songs, doing some jokes. Should be a good time.
All right. For those who are interested, I will have links to everyone's platforms down in the episode description. So just go ahead and go to the episode description. You should see links for everyone's podcasts, Twitch platforms, YouTube channels down there. Thank you to everyone for checking out this portion of the panel. Make sure you stick around for some words from our sponsors, and we'll be right back after that with my next guest for this week. Stay tuned.